Scary stories. My wife peeks at me from around corners. At first it was just weird, but now I'm genuinely scared. My wife Lynn and I have been together for 6 years, married for almost 11 months. During all that time, she'd always acted completely normal, no odd behavior, not even small quirks. That's why what's happening now feels so terrifyingly out of character. Lynn is kind, smart, and caring. She's always been level-headed and completely sane. Childish pranks or attempts to scare someone, that's just not her. She doesn't even like horror movies. When we first started dating, she agreed to watch The Shining with me, knowing how much I love horror. She got so freaked out we had to turn it off before we even reached the halfway point. Creepy stuff and jump scares just don't interest her, and that's totally fine. But that's exactly what makes her current behavior so unnerving. She has no history of mental illness, and as far as I know, there's nothing like that in her family either. Sure, people can hide these things for years, but after 6 years together, I think I would have noticed something. 2 months ago, I was in the kitchen making coffee before work. I was running a little late and knew I wouldn't have time to stop at Dunkin' like I usually do. I took a sip and started heading for the door, and that's when I saw Lynn peeking at me from around the corner. I only saw her eyes and a lock of dark hair hanging along the wall. The rest of her was hidden. Startled, I nearly spilled my coffee and burned my lip. "Jesus, Lynn," I said, trying to flick the drops off my pants. "You scared the hell out of me." She immediately ducked back behind the wall like a kid caught misbehaving. I heard her run into the living room, and by the time I got to the door, she was nowhere to be seen. Like I said, completely out of character, but honestly, I found it a little funny. Maybe she was just goofing around, trying to be less serious for once. I called out, "Love you, you weirdo," and shut the door behind me. I heard her laugh. Yeah, it was strange, but nothing worth calling a priest over. By lunchtime, I'd already forgotten about it, and when I came home later, she was acting completely normal again. We didn't talk about it, and life went on. The next incident happened 3 days later. It was around 2 a.m. when I woke up feeling thirsty. I went downstairs to the kitchen, grabbed a carton of orange juice, and suddenly, I felt this overwhelming sensation like someone was watching me. Something made me glance down, and that's when I saw her face, smiling, staring up at me from behind the other side of the kitchen island. Her eyes were wide open, unblinking. That grin stretched across her face like the Cheshire Cat. "No joke," I screamed. Not out of annoyance, but real fear. When I yelled, Lynn suddenly sprang back and disappeared from sight, scurrying out of the kitchen on all fours, slapping her hands and knees loudly against the tile as she crawled away. I didn't chase her. I didn't even say anything. I just stood there in shock, trying to process what the hell I'd just seen. Eventually, I got the nerve to head back upstairs. When I entered the bedroom, Lynn was lying on her side, eyes closed, seemingly asleep, maybe pretending. I stood there quietly, watching her breathe, trying to figure out if she was really asleep. I had this awful feeling that she was going to leap at me the moment I got into bed, but she didn't move. Not even a little. I crawled under the blanket and she just stayed where she was, perfectly still. Her breathing was calm and deep, and I started wondering, maybe I dreamed the whole thing. The next morning, I waited for her to come downstairs for coffee. When she walked in, I handed her a mug, kissed her cheek, and asked, "So, what was that all about last night?" I kept my tone light. I didn't want to upset her or make her feel weird. She frowned and shook her head like she had no idea what I was talking about. "You were spying on me again, weren't you?" "Right there," I said, pointing to the spot on the floor next to the kitchen island. She followed my gaze, then looked at me and burst out laughing. Her laugh was so contagious I couldn't help but laugh with her. "Sometimes you seriously freak me out," I said. She giggled, set her cup on the table, and wrapped her arms around my neck. "Well, you always scare me," she joked, "so I guess we're even." We said our goodbyes and I left for work, but the image of her face, that creepy smile peeking out from behind the counter, kept replaying in my mind. The sounds I heard when she crawled off on all fours, I kept telling myself she was just goofing around. Maybe she was trying to share my love of horror. I wasn't afraid of her, but something still didn't sit right with me. After that, I started noticing her watching me more and more. Sometimes she'd peek out from behind the couch, Other times she'd hide behind the curtains in the living room. One time she even managed to squeeze herself into her grandmother's antique trunk at the foot of our bed. I might not have noticed her at all if the old hinges hadn't creaked. The lid was cracked open just enough that I could see part of her face. She was staring right at me, smiling like a happy little kid. It was seriously unnerving. I didn't even know what to say. I just stood there, staring back at her. When I finally found my voice, I asked, "Why the hell are you doing this?" She didn't respond. She just slowly closed the lid, hiding herself again. I just walked away, but I felt deeply unsettled. I had no idea why she was doing this, but it was obvious she was enjoying it. All I could do was hope she'd get bored of it soon. For the next 2 weeks, Lynn stopped spying on me. I started thinking she'd finally gotten tired of that strange little prank, and I felt relieved. One evening, we were watching a show on Netflix, and I jokingly said I hadn't seen her spying on me lately. Maybe she got bored of her secret agent game. She looked up and smiled slightly. "Maybe I just got better at it," she said. I didn't say anything, but I couldn't stop wondering if she was joking or not. Over the next few days, I couldn't get it out of my head. What if she really had been spying on me this whole time, and I just hadn't noticed? And if that was true, what was she getting out of it? I started to feel paranoid. I kept glancing over my shoulder, checking around corners, behind doors, anytime she left the room or went out of sight. I felt ridiculous, like I was losing my mind. But after a few more weeks with nothing strange happening, I started to relax again. I stopped peeking behind the furniture, quit checking the shadows. I told myself it had just been a weird phase, one of those strange episodes in life that eventually fade away. But a few nights ago, things got much worse. Lynn had gone over to a friend's place and I stayed home, lounging on the couch and gaming on my laptop. Around 9 p.m., I decided to take a shower. I was rinsing shampoo out of my hair when that awful feeling hit me again, that feeling of being watched. I opened my eyes slowly, and I almost had a goddamn heart attack. Lynn was peeking in at me from behind the shower curtain. Her whole head was inside the tub, but her body stayed outside the curtain. Her long dark hair stuck to the wet fabric, and water was dripping from the ends. Her mouth was wide open in a horrible grin. Her eyes were wide too, bloodshot and wild. It looked like she hadn't blinked in a very long time. I screamed and recoiled, pressing myself against the shower wall. She didn't move. That awful grin on her face didn't even twitch. Black streaks of makeup were running down her cheeks. She looked insane, and I was absolutely scared out of my mind. We stood there like that for what felt like forever, not saying a single word. Then finally, she slowly pulled her head back behind the curtain. I watched her blurred figure retreat toward the bathroom door. And then suddenly, the door slammed shut with a deafening bang, so loud the mirror on the wall rattled. I screamed again and jumped out of the shower, rushing to lock the bathroom door behind me. I stayed in that bathroom for over an hour. Some people might say I overreacted, but joke or not, I wasn't going to put up with this insane crap anymore. That's what I kept repeating to myself as I paced the bathroom, trying to listen for any sound behind the door. Then, all of a sudden, I heard a muffled noise. I pressed my ear to the door to hear better. It wasn't clear, but in my mind, I imagined Lynn standing on the other side, quietly giggling at her own twisted little prank. And that thought made me furious. I was beyond pissed that I'd been so terrified in my own home that I'd been locked in the bathroom for over an hour, all because of some sick joke. If it was a prank, it was a cruel one. "What the hell, Lynn?" I shouted. "I'm serious, I've had enough of this." I waited, expecting her to yell back, or at least say something, maybe insult me for being so dramatic. Instead, all I heard was a soft moan, so faint I wasn't even sure it was real. And then, complete silence. "Lynn?" I called her name. My voice was shaking. No answer, only the sound of my own heavy breathing. "Jesus Christ, stop this already! Enough!" I yelled and slammed my fist against the door. I waited, expecting her to snap back at me. That would have been the normal response. Just so you know, I'd never yelled at her like that before, but still, nothing. Only the occasional drip of water from the shower head. I won't lie, I was genuinely, deeply afraid. I was so terrified I didn't even want to open that damn door and come face to face with my own wife. I waited another 30 minutes. It felt like an eternity. Eventually, I realized I couldn't spend the whole night locked in the bathroom. so I got down on my knees and looked under the door. I expected to see her face staring back at me, but thankfully I didn't. The hallway was clear all the way to the staircase, no sign of Lynn. I didn't know whether to be relieved or more afraid. I stared for a few minutes, half expecting her head to suddenly appear at the top of the stairs, but nothing. I stood up, my hand hovering over the lock. I was psyching myself up to open the door. My fingers were trembling as I turned it. Just as I was about to pull the door open, I heard a sound that still makes me sick to my stomach just thinking about it. A moan, louder than before. And this time, I knew exactly where it was coming from. I slowly turned my head toward the closet door. And there was Lynn, staring at me through the crack. Her eyes were still wide open, and her mouth stretched into the most grotesque grin I've ever seen. I didn't even scream. I was too frozen with fear. Her hands were clasped tightly against her chest, and her body was trembling, as if she was so overwhelmed with joy she could barely contain herself. A deep, guttural moan escaped her throat, low and raw, almost animalistic. A shiver ran down my spine. Somehow I managed to rip the bathroom door open and bolt down the stairs, knocking the keys and my phone off the coffee table as I ran. Behind me, I heard her high-pitched laughter, but no footsteps. She wasn't chasing me. Not yet. I didn't even bother to shut the front door. I just ran out of the house and sped off in my car, breaking every speed limit, trembling with fear. Whether it was from fear or cold, probably both. I had no jacket, no shoes, just my underwear. My hair was still wet. I drove straight to my brother Chris's house, which was about 40 minutes away. I ignored all calls and messages along the way. Only after pulling into his driveway did I finally check my phone. 4 missed calls from Lynn and a bunch of texts. She was asking, "Where are you? Why did you leave like that?" Angry at how calm and casual her tone was, I threw the phone against the dashboard. Chris and his wife were surprised to see me, especially dressed the way I was. But they didn't ask any questions, they just let me in. Chris gave me some of his clothes and asked what happened. I told him Lynn and I had a fight, but didn't go into details. I didn't want him thinking I'd run out on my wife over some dumb joke. After all, I was the one who'd spent years asking her to loosen up a little, to stop being so serious all the time. But this wasn't what I meant at all. I tried to fall asleep on the couch, but my brain just wouldn't shut off. Every time I closed my eyes, I saw her face in the crack of that closet door. We had been in the bathroom the whole time. Holy crap, she never even left. She was in the damn closet. She slammed the bathroom door just to throw me off. Just thinking about going back home made me feel sick. I tossed and turned, unable to sleep. Eventually, Chris gave me some sleeping pills and I managed to doze off for a bit, but the sleep was awful. I kept seeing Lynn's face in my dreams, that smile. I woke up at dawn, my whole body aching from the couch. I felt drained. I knew I had to call Lynn, but I had no idea what to say. There was no way I was going back home unless she promised to cut out that creepy crap for good. I just wanted my old wife back. Serious, sensible Lynn. I'd never wanted her more than I did in that moment. I was just debating whether to call her and say all of that, when suddenly, that familiar wave hit me again. That feeling, like I was being watched. I lay there staring at the ceiling, a lump in my throat, afraid to even turn my head. But the longer I ignored it, the stronger it got. My eyes shifted on their own, and I saw her face. It was pressed against the window beside the couch. She was staring straight at me with that same gaping smile. 2 long trails of drool were sliding down the glass. I had no idea how long she'd been standing there, but something inside me knew. She could have been there all night. I didn't even scream. Fear gave way to rage. I shot up from the couch and slammed my hand against the window. "Lynn, what the hell is wrong with you? Are you completely insane? Go home," I shouted. "Right now." She didn't move. That horrible grin didn't flinch. If anything, it got wider. She looked happier than I'd ever seen her. I heard movement upstairs. Chris and his wife had clearly been woken up. Lynn seemed to hear them too. Her head twitched slightly in their direction, and then, very slowly, she began to close her mouth. Chris called my name, his voice clearly uneasy. I turned and saw Chris and Rebecca coming down the stairs, but when I looked back at the window, Lynn was already gone. The only proof she'd even been there were 2 streaks of drool still sliding slowly down the glass. I tried to explain to Chris and Rebecca that I'd woken up and seen Lynn staring at me through their window, but they were skeptical. And honestly, who wouldn't be? Chris and I went outside to the spot beneath the window, but there were no footprints, just slightly pressed grass. Probably some kind of animal, Chris suggested. I didn't argue. They both thought I dreamed it all, and I didn't have the energy to convince them otherwise. I called into work and took the day off. Then I turned off my phone. I didn't want to see Lynn, didn't want to talk to her. It was just too much. I started to seriously wonder if something was truly wrong with her, something that couldn't be fixed. No matter what she promised, we could never go back to the way things were. And that thought was tearing me apart. I cried most of the morning. By noon, I decided I was ready to talk to her, to give her one last chance to explain. After all, 6 years together, she deserved at least that, I told myself. I turned my phone back on and saw dozens of messages from her, all from a supposedly worried wife. Can we talk? I love you. Please call me. I'm so worried. Please answer. Just come home. And so on. All the same words about how much she loved me, how much she missed me, how scared she was. But not one single message mentioned that horrifying crap she'd pulled, like none of it had even happened. I don't know what to do. I'm alone, I'm scared, and I can't shake the feeling that someone is watching me. Thank you for watching. Good night.